Welcome to the very first episode of the Horror Screams podcast, an extension of the Horror Screams Video Vault website. I am your host, Peter, alongside Stephen.
Hello, it's Stephen here. Yes, I am a writer for Horror Screams Video Vault, and I've also written the book Scream, Devil's Advocate, which is all about the film Scream.
It's not just about the film Scream, though, is it? Has it got other mentions, like the sequels or the TV series, or is it just the first film?
Oh, God, yes. Yes, well, I'm glad you asked, Pete. That's very important. Yeah, no, it's just about Scream, and it's about its place in, I suppose, the history of slasher films, horror in the 90s, and it touches a bit on the sequels. But yeah, it's all about how Scream popped up in the 90s and did stuff.
Basically made horror have its comeback.
Again. Yeah, absolutely. While cheerfully kind of stealing from everything before it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So in this episode, we are going to talk about the 1983 film Sweet 16, which I believe you've seen maybe a couple of times. I've seen it a couple of times. I know I have.
Yeah. I watched it for this podcast, but I hadn't seen it before then since about the year 2000-ish.
1983.
1806. Yeah. And the last time I saw it was on video. Yeah.
Oh, so there's a while ago then.
A little.
Yeah. So we'll have a brief talk about that before we jump in to talk about what this month is really all about. Halloween. Not just the first Halloween. We're going to be talking about all of its sequels, which is 11, including the new one.
Yeah, all 36 of the sequels, the TV series, the radio show, the spin-off, Plimsolls.
Don't give anybody any ideas.
The plug-in air freshener.
Yeah. So, I suppose the best place to start is, what was your thoughts on Sweet 16?
Sweet 16. Yeah, I really enjoyed Sweet 16. We're choosing it as part of kind of a monthly random retro choice of something that maybe hasn't had a lot of attention. And Sweet 16 tends to get forgotten a bit in the kind of cycle of slasher films. And it is a bit odd, isn't it? Let's face it. It's not your regular plug in and play slasher movie.
No, I've mentioned I've seen it a couple of times. I watched it again on the Code Red DVD, which I'm not sure if it's any different than the 88 films cut, but yeah, it's a bit plodding, I suppose, with the theme of it.
Yeah, it is a little slow. It's fair to say. It's not like Whip Crack Away or anything. Yeah, I mean, there are different versions of it. I know that when I watched this, I watched the 88 films release, part of their Slasher Classics, which is stretching it a bit. Slasher Classic. And I remember the VHS version, at least, opened with the shower scene where Melissa, our kind of heroine, is in the shower.
Yeah.
And her god-awful song is playing, which is this...
it's that
ballad.
Yes, well, you say it's an 80s ballad. I'd say it's more like a 1970s ballad, but it's done by Frank Sparks, which I tried to find out and see if he did anything else, but I couldn't find anything. But yeah, it's not a great ballad. You hear it again later in the film when a footballer tries to hit on her, and it's playing along there, which I think once was enough to hear that thing. But if you really want to listen to it again, you can find it on YouTube.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just type in Melissa's song from Sweet 16 and you can get to listen to it all over again.
Melissa, what are you thinking, sweet Melissa? You look so far away. Are you with us, Melissa?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're a big fan of this song then. I wasn't a big fan of it. But...
Straight in at number one, pop pickers. Yeah, you're right. It feels like the 70s. In fact, the whole film feels like the 70s. It's called 1983, but I suspect this may have sat on a shelf for a while because even Patrick McNee looks like he's walked off the Avengers set.
That's what I was going to say. But this was directed by Jim Sotos, I believe, who originally, before this, 1976, he did the film Forced Entry. You ever seen that?
Oh, I've never seen it. I think it's quite controversial, isn't it?
Yes, it's a rape thriller type horror movie.
Yeah.
So I,
Yeah, I've never seen that one. This is really odd. We should probably explain the plot for those that haven't seen it. But Melissa is the sweet 60, even though she's clearly about 30. She's a 15 officially, isn't she? About to turn sweet 16.
yeah, she's 15, and straight away, pretty much in the movie, I mean, obviously in the context of the film, it makes sense. She's going to be turning 16, and she's obviously not a 16-year-old as an actress, but in the film, she's playing a 15-year-old, and as viewers, we are watching a 15-year-old
Yeah.
getting naked, and so it's something quite pervy and a bit wrong about watching that scene.
Oh,
But
it's ridiculous. Yeah. There's
but
lingering panty shots and shower scenes and
yeah,
barely dressed at school. Yeah, just
but yeah, in the context of the movie, it makes sense. But as I said, as a viewer watching it, knowing that she's a 15-year-old, you feel no, this is just wrong. But she's played by Elisa Shirley,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
who I don't know if she did anything else. I didn't have a chance to have a look, but did you find out if she did anything else other than this?
From what I remember, I think it's just like small roles in TV stuff. But this is an early film in her career, and I don't think she did much else, to be honest with you. But she's surrounded by kind of a mad cast of well-known B-movie actors and Patrick Macnee.
Yeah, you got Patrick Macnee as her archaeologist dad. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Does he have a name? I'm not sure if he had a name.
He's called Archaeologist Dad.
Archaeologist Dad. You're from the Avengers.
I'm Patrick.
Yes. You had Dana Kimmel, who played Marcy, who's prior to this film was Chris in Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yeah, and you see, that's why I think this movie was probably made earlier than 83, because she looks quite a bit younger than she does in Part 3 of Friday the 13th, which came out, as you said, a year earlier.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I was watching it. I thought,
strange.
Who else?
She hadn't yet got the perm.
Oh yes, the perm. Who else we got? We got Bo Hopkins as the sheriff.
Yeah.
And Steve Antin, who played Hank in this film, but he played, I think his name was Troy in the Goonies.
Ah, yes.
I was looking at him and I thought, you remind me of something. That suddenly popped in my head who it was. And coincidentally, considering what we're going to be talking about later, the film has Don Shanks in it, who plays the Native American Jason, who in Halloween 5 plays Michael Myers.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? And he's got quite a big part, so to speak, in this film as kind of the main target of the racist local people and kind of the big red herring, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. Oh, of course, we forgot to mention, well, you mentioned Patrick Macnee, who most people know as John Steed from the Avengers, but of course there's Susan Strasberg as well.
Yeah, she has a great role here. If we gave away the ending, it would probably explain why her role's really good. But yeah, she's a great kind of actress from the Roger Corman era.
Yes.
Who got some cool roles when she was a bit older, but probably should have had more work in better stuff than Sweet 16. Although, we quite like Sweet 16. But yeah, she's great. Also, sorry, 16. Also, another Halloween connection is the brief role of Michael Pataki, who is, I think his character is Hoffman in Halloween 4, the guy who's on the phone to Loomis when he says, "Oh, sorry, bad news about that prison transfer with Michael Myers."
Yeah, it does sound
a really reliable guy.
Susan Strasberg also starred in The Manitui in 1978.
Ah, the one with Tony Curtis and the medicine man throws on her back.
But I quite like that film. I like the books as well. But she also was in Bloody Birthday in 1981. Oh. So she has a bit of a slasher connection anyway.
Of course. Yeah, that's mad. Yeah, and she's really solid. Another actress is Sharon Farrell, who is she pretty much phones in her performance because she spends most of the film on the phone to Bo Hopkins talking about baked potatoes and doing lots of research into the bargain. And she is the star of, she's the wife in It's Alive. Of the monster baby.
There you go. So we got what you would consider quite a big cast for then. I mean, there's names and faces that I certainly recognise throughout. So the film obviously starts off with a girl, which kind of looks like an atmospheric gothic movie, where there's a girl sitting reading a book, which is called Murder Mystery, which is a bit on the nose. I think it's a romantic comedy. I'm not entirely sure. Yes. Oh, yeah. So she's sitting there reading that, and then she wakes up and you find out it was a nightmare all along, which is then a bit later on you get introduced to, I guess, the main focus of the movie, which is Melissa.
Melissa.
Oh, no, please don't
Sweet
sing that.
Melissa. She looks so far away. I like the fact that in the film, for no reason, that song starts playing when she's just sat around eating an apple. Melissa.
Oh, that's when she was getting hit on by the football guy, the captain of the football team.
The quarterback. Yeah, the captain. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So sexy.
So what you got? Oh, it's right from pretty much after they had the wake up from the nightmare scene, which then, for me, when I first seen the film, and again watching it last night, I was like, oh, you got that scene, but then it jumps into something completely different. So you're expecting it to be one thing, but then So it starts off with Billy and Jason having a bar fight over a Native American comes in the bar at the beginning, and Jason's obviously the young strapping Native American who doesn't take no crap from anybody. So he's sorting everything out, and he sort of stops Melissa from going off with some young guys, doesn't she?
That's right, yeah. So he's kind of established as, not sure if we should trust him. However, he does step in and does a gentlemanly thing because there's some awful young boy that's drawn to her.
Yeah, but if you notice, throughout the whole film, as we mentioned, she's a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And she's turning 16. But pretty much the whole town, in males that is, the whole male community of the film is chasing after her.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. And Patrick Macnee, because he's her dad, archaeologist dad, he keeps popping up to remind everyone that she's only 15. Oh, she's only 15. Yeah, well, we know she's only 15. Yeah, I'm not sure if this film could be remade exactly as it is today, to be honest with you.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it would warrant a remake. It would be one of those films that would pop up and go, we're going to remake Sweet 16.
Yeah. Is Patrick Macnee still around?
Well, he could play the body of the archaeologist being dug up, I suppose. That's about it.
Yeah, that's true.
So Johnny, no, not Johnny. What was his name? Jason. He works at for Melissa's dad at the archaeologist dig, which just happens to be an Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
So he's working there, and then Melissa goes off with what's his name? Is it Billy? I think his name's Billy. It goes off into no man's land, where I don't know how long they've been there, but she suddenly starts wondering where they are, even though they've obviously been there for a while. And then he mentions that they're at an Indian burial ground, and of course she wants to leave, and she goes. I think she goes off, doesn't she?
Yeah.
But he stays there, or no, he doesn't. She goes off, gets dropped off at her home by Billy, which is when Patrick Macnee gets introduced into the film as the stern dad with his walking stick and tells the young hooligan to run off, and that's when Billy's car breaks down halfway through, and then of course it doesn't end very well for him a bit later on in the film.
Billy,
which is only 15 minutes into the film before you get your first kill.
Wow. And that's that's interesting. And it's interesting because the movie is doing all the usual stuff for slasher films, like the point of view camera, the fake scares and the knife kills, but it's the men that are kind of the object of the point of view camera and of the knife killing as well. And Melissa is that kind of tarty character that normally in a slasher film would stand no chance of getting past the first half, but she's not really the heroine, but you kind of like her because Dana Kimmel is so damn irritating as the the kind of Nancy Drew. Oh, a mystery! I love a mystery. So you kind of warm to Melissa, even though the film isn't going out of its way to make her very sympathetic or very interesting.
Well, you mentioned Marcy. That was the name, wasn't it?
Yes.
Dana Kimmel's character. Yeah, she. I was watching it and I thought she's doing a better job at trying to work out who the killer is than the police are. Bo Hopkins is the sheriff and his crack team of one person, along with the lady on the other end of the phone who's always talking
Sharon.
about having a steak sandwich.
Yeah, Sharon's just
wanting to marry him.
Yeah.
But Dana Kimmel seems to be wanting to solve it, but Bo Hopkins keeps going, yeah, well, you're not a detective, so let me do my job.
But I know who the killer is. No, got no time for your sword.
So, yeah, so you had that. Then, as we mentioned earlier, this is when you get the first bit of nudity into the film, where she's having a shower scene, which feels slightly wrong. The body gets discovered of Billy, who died earlier by mysterious circumstances, and Jason just happens to be the prime suspect, because earlier in the film he was telling these young hooligans to do one. And of course, he's the one that everybody's going to point the finger of. And is it Frank and his friend don't think much of the Native Americans in the area, so it just seems easy pickings. Melissa, as we mentioned, has the cheesy ballad happening. I think she's walking somewhere. I'm not quite sure what she's doing. She's just walking. She's randomly play. Which
what?
She goes to the bar, doesn't she? Doesn't she go to the bar? And she's supposed to be meeting some guy there. Yeah, it's the jock. They go to meet the jock to go have some marijuana, and that's when he gets killed, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's not, because she goes there to meet him, but it's the old Indian guy that's out the back who then, of course, gets fingered as being the other guy who might have done the murdering. Then after that, somebody else dies. I'm sure somebody else dies between that. There's three people. I think so. Three people died. There was Billy, who dies in the desert. There's the guy who dies behind the bar, but I'm sure somebody else dies around about then, but I can't recall. But yeah, so then Jason gets accused of stealing artifacts from the dig. So, of course, he gets arrested, not just for the murders, but potential murders, and the artifacts, which we later find out are sacrificial knives from the Indian burial ground, which look very, very clean and very posh, considering they've just been dug out of the desert for however long they've been there. So, and then, of course, while this is going on, Melissa's having her 16th birthday party, which brings the whole town out. It's a good old Texas birthday party, which is hosted by Susan Strasberg.
Susan Strasberg.
Really which then, a bit long after that, somebody else comes up and ends up being dead, which brings it up to 5. There's quite a few people die in this film, considering how plodding the film is. So at this point, we've had 5 people die.
Yeah, it is really slow, isn't it? It's a strangely paced film, and it's got a lot of different stuff going on that doesn't quite gel, like the racist local community, the weird gothic horror opening, which has no relevance whatsoever. It's just although it was part of a tradition, I think, of long dream sequences in slasher films, or fake starts, like the start of Killer Party, which is just which I think is 2 or 3. Oh, actually, it's a dream. Oh no, it's not. It's a music video. Oh no, it's not. So it's part of that tradition, I think. But yeah, there's a lot of different things going on, with no one really to sympathise with, and random Susan Strasbergness.
I actually quite liked her character. Her character in this film makes some sort of sense, as opposed to Patrick Macnee, who I'm gathering must have just been looking for work. And of course, this was the point where everybody was, horror films are getting quite big again. Let's try and get into it. So I'm not sure what you would have been doing around this time. Maybe the new Avengers, maybe.
Well, The Howling was 1983.
Oh yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
if this film was made earlier than 1983, which I think it must have been, I wonder if this was around that same time. He was in a few different odd things. He had a strange career, old Patrick. And he did that duet with Honor Blackman, Kinky Boots. Do you remember that? That's mad.
That's probably not a good memory to have.
No, but it's strangely similar to this because it's got a line about sexy little schoolgirls. You know, they're going through all the people that might wear kinky boots and schoolgirls. And actually comes up, what? Patrick. Yeah, I don't think Patrick was entirely legit. But yeah, it's a strange film.
He didn't look particularly infused for it. It certainly looked like he was toning down his performance.
Yeah.
Because he's pretty much one of them characters that turns up and gives you, oh, this is going to happen in the next scene. Well, not completely tell you what's going to happen, but after he said something, you're like, oh, okay, I'll pay attention now.
Yeah. He's there to move the plot along a bit.
Pretty much.
Things have gone a bit stale. Patrick, oh, yeah, well, actually. Who
was the guy who played the mayor? Because I recognised him, but I couldn't think what his name was.
Oh, I can't remember.
No, but I recognised him from quite a few things as well, and I thought, I know you from something, and it was bugging me, but hey, never mind. Yeah. So at this point, we've had about 5 murders happen, I believe, and as we mentioned, it's Melissa's birthday party, and she wanders off with Billy to go skinny dipping. So of course she's going to go get naked again in the lake, I guess that's what it is, which is when you see the 2 guys who are perving on, well, more her, and then want to have a bit of action with her. So one of them knocks out Billy, and for some strange reason, considering what they want to do with her, the other guy knocks her out.
Yeah.
And then the other guy complains to him. You go, what the hell are you doing? Like, what? I mean, they was basically about to go rape her, and then the other guy punched her in the face, and he's like, hang on a bit, you're going a bit too far here, aren't you?
It doesn't quite make sense.
No.
But it's ticking the boxes for, oh shit, slasher movie, skinny dipping scene. Yeah, there we go. Yep. Tick.
It's got to be at nighttime as well, with the moon shining on the lake. Yeah.
Well, this town doesn't have a lake. Oh, it does. It does.
It does. But we're in a bit of a built-up city.
It's like there's an episode in Buffy where it's gone on for seasons and years, and suddenly they say, oh, we've got a clock tower. There's someone at the top shooting at people. You never had a clock tower.
This is like in like soap operas as well, where, you know, there could be somebody who's a single child, that's it, lone child for the rest of their life, and then, I know, their character gets a bit stale halfway through, so they're like, hey, look, here's your long lost brother that nobody's ever mentioned for the past 20 years of this program.
Billy?
Then, as we was just talking about, Melissa nearly getting raped, this is when the 2 guys get attacked again. But this time they get stabbed, but we still don't know who by.
No.
But I certainly had an inkling from the first time I watched it who it was going to be, because, like we mentioned, there's a few red herrings. Native American Jason earlier by the pool gets the pond gets knocked out, gets beaten up, doesn't he, by the 2 guys because he's trying to stop them from perving on them.
Yeah.
So you're potentially thinking, oh, it might be him. Maybe he's got back up, but you don't see him again until later on in the film. So I actually thought he was dead for a while, but then this is when the actual killer shows up. So who's the actual killer, if you want to actually mention who it is, or just briefly outline it?
Well, it's one of the slasher genre's familiar mad mum characters.
Yeah, which has her own little plot, which doesn't really get revealed until like maybe the last 15 minutes of the film.
Really quickly, like, oh god, we've got to get it all out.
Yeah, they're going through the library files. Oh yeah, we just happened to stumble across this little bit of information that potentially nobody ever mentioned, even though the mayor of the town was, going by all accounts of what their brief interactions are, they've actually grown up together. So how did he not know who she really was? But hey, it's one of them little plot lines that kind of like, okay, we can brush over that because she's been gone away from the town for however long.
Yeah.
So, of course, towards the end of the film, we've had 6 people die now, which you don't really see anybody die on screen. I think the most gruesome death is Frank's buddy, who has a load of blood pouring down his face. But that's about it. There's no real like stabbing scenes as such that you'd expect in a slasher film.
Yeah, and it's not the usual. I suppose. Well, it gets a 15 these days, so it's quite mild. But yeah, it's not got the creative deaths of some of the big famous slashers.
No. So at this point, you've had 6 people die, and obviously we've now had the reveal of who the actual killer was, which then you get back to Melissa towards the end of the film, who potentially is having a nervous breakdown, which kind of leaves it hanging to, will there be a sequel? Which I'm gathering is going to be Sweet 17. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. Is that classic 80s slasher, oh God, it's not over yet ending. And I think it even ends with a freeze frame as well, which is very 80s. Yeah.
Oh, that was one of the things. Because we're not going to mention who the killer actually is. There's a moment in it where it's obviously been inspired by Friday the 13th, where in Friday the 13th, where Alice is about to chop off. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched the first Friday the 13th, chops off Jason Voorhees' bum's head. It goes into that bit of slow motion kind of bit.
Yeah.
And you get that bit briefly in this as well, where it's obviously been inspired by it.
Yeah.
Which
that was it.
But as opposed to Friday the 13th, where it works, in this moment, it was like a really weird place to do it. It wasn't like it's in a key scene where something dramatic was going to happen. It was basically like somebody was about to put a letter through a letterbox. And, my God. That's important. I hope you read the envelope. No. But, so, overall, what was your take of the film?
It's not that great actually, but I think it's a valuable one because I just think it's from that period which I really like. I really like the early 80s slasher films, and it's just trying to do something a bit different. So it's got all the usual stuff you'd get in a giallo, the kind of sexy stuff and the red herrings and stuff. But it's a bit of a mess and it's a bit slow, as we've said, down to the strange opening. And
it's not the slowest slasher film I've ever seen. I'm not talking about like now. I'm talking pre 1990. That I would well, I have a title in my head. But what's the slowest slasher film pre 1990 that pops into your head?
The slowest slasher film I've ever seen, especially from that period, is actually called Scream, which is that weird kind of slasher western type thing. Did you ever watch that one? It's very slow.
I don't recall it, but I think I have seen the video coverage. It's probably one of them films I looked at and thought, oh, it's got a really nice looking cover.
Yeah.
That's either a really good thing or a really bad thing.
And almost nothing happens very slowly. But it's interesting, even that one's quite interesting because it's trying to do something a little different to the summer camp kind of slasher films that we had loads of. So, yeah, that's really slow. What's your slowest one?
My one would have been Terror at 10 Killer.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of talking in that.
Oh, yes. So there's a hell of a lot of talking.
And even, Prey is very slow. Prey is great, but Prey has loads of nature shots.
Yes, a lot of I'm going to go off and have a walk now. And then that character goes off somewhere. And then 20 minutes to the film, you still see that character wandering around. You're like, you must have walked like 10 miles. How are you going to get back to the house in time? I did actually watch that at a film screen. I think it might have been an Arrow Film Festival thing.
Ah, yes.
But surprisingly, it actually went down quite well. I can't remember what the other film was showing there, but I remember Prey going down surprisingly well because I was thinking, dear.
I think some of them have a real charm, and I think sometimes the slow pace is part of the charm because films these days tend to be really quick cut and something you got to get moving fast like a music video or something. But back then they had a bit more time to kill, and the Prey's got charm, probably more than Sweet 16 actually. But...
Yeah, I mean, I did actually buy Prey recently on the Arrow release, which we say for like,
Oh.
But yeah, I quite like it, so it made sense to me to buy it. So if you was to give it a star rating, not Terror at 10 Killer, I don't think that deserves any stars. But that's But if you was to give Sweet 16 a star rating, what would you give it?
Oh, that's really difficult. Sweet 16 probably gets kind of generous points just for having a once in a lifetime cast, which it does, because you're never going to get these people in a film ever again.
Especially now, because most of them are dead.
Patrick, he's not available.
Susan Strasberg's dead as well, surprisingly.
Yeah, and she's great. I really like that. And so, but it's like a lot of films from this period. Like they often have old time actors that didn't get much work in their kind of old age, and they pop up in these slasher films. Probably I'd have to give it 2 out of 5, I think, because it isn't great, but there's things about it that are interesting, including the fact that it's the men that are the target of the killer and of the usual camera stuff, and the character that Melissa is not the kind of character that would usually be the main protagonist in the slasher film.
Well, I think that's a fair star rating. That's what I would have given it. I mean, like we do on the website, we do 1 to 5 star rating, 1 being poor, 5 being great movie. But yeah, it's not the worst film. It does have its moments, and like you said, it's got a great cast, which potentially, if it didn't have the big names in it, would it be as good as it actually is? I don't know.
Probably
not. But hey, so yeah, I'd give it a 2-star rating, but that's just our opinions. People have to let us know what they think of it when they get round to watching it.
Yeah, please do. And it is, as we said, it's on Code Red, or it was on Code Red, but it's also part of the quite sexy the Red Box 88 film slasher classic series, and they have done a mixture of what I would say is legitimate slasher classics and also the more obscure stuff as well. So that's a nice kind of line of releases.
And some that people would consider, is that really a slasher?
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of push it. Children of the Corn series is pushing the label a bit.
Somebody got stabbed in that. That's a slasher.
Yeah, there's a knife in that.
But it's also on Amazon Prime.
Oh wow!
No, I was surprised by that. I was like, I did a bit of research into this. It's on Amazon Prime. I just figured it'd be one of them, would only be on disc somewhere, other than maybe floating around on YouTube.
Yeah.
Illegally, but
yeah, there's a few that are kind of trapped on YouTube purgatory, aren't they? That haven't yet kind of made it to disc properly. I think it's probably happened in America, but for a long time I was looking for a nice edition of To All a Good Night, which has traditionally had these really kind of dark looking videos and stuff. But
I think that is floating around on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that's probably where I watched it actually.
Yeah.
It's one of them ones, where you're searching for stuff and you're like, oh, what's this? Yeah, the little thumbnails down the side. You click that and you end up watching that instead of what you was going to watch.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
So yeah, that was Sweet 16, which, as we mentioned, is a 2-rated star film. Let us know what you think about it, whether it's on social media or whatever. But yeah, so next up, why don't you let me know what you have been watching recently? Because I've only watched a couple of things recently, one of them being Candy Corn, but we'll talk about that some other time. So what have you seen? Because I'm sure you'll probably say something, and it's probably something I've seen as well.
I actually, Candy Corn. Interesting. I watched for the first time. Actually, I watched from the most recent release, Norman J. Warren's Bloody New Year, which is from the same era as good old Sweet 16, but is a bit more British. I'd never watched it before.
Oh, had you? I thought you had.
No, never watched it.
Ah,
It's relatively hard to find. It was relatively hard to find. I think there was like a redemption video and probably some other DVD. I'm not sure, but
yep, and it came out by Vinegar Syndrome maybe last year. So I'm presuming
yeah,
that maybe that's where Indicator maybe got in touch and produced this box set. It's a really nice box set, though, isn't it?
it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. The box set has got all of his obvious horror films: Satan's Slave, Prey,
A
Terror, uh,
Seminoid.
and Seminoid. Yeah. And this is kind of the odd one out because it's the only one. Well, I think in Seminoid is just in the 80s, but the others are kind of very 70s. And this is kind of at the end of the slasher cycle. And it's not really, well, it's kind of a slasher film, but it's also got a bit of The Shining. It's more of a kind of supernatural, paranormal thing about a bunch of teenagers. Not really, are they? Who are stuck.
Yeah, they're definitely teenagers. They're not 30, 40 plus year olds.
Not at all. No, no, not at all. Pauline Fowler, kind of age. Yeah, they're stuck in a time loop in this 1950s hotel New Year's Eve party setup, and it's really bizarre. They spend about 20 minutes at the start running away from these strange old people, well, older people, at the fun fair, and eventually they end up at the abandoned hotel. Um, yeah, it's fun.
It's a
It's
fun film.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really is, and it's a bit different to his other films. It's not as nasty, and it's more maybe along the lines of what was happening in the late 80s, which is kind of the surrealistic stuff, the
Yeah.
kind of grabby arms coming from the walls, and the more paranormal effects based stuff. And for a low budget British film from what was it, 1986, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely the tail end of the 80s.
Yeah, considering what it is, and it probably cost almost nothing. It's really well done. It's got runaway hoovers and
Oh, yeah, I forgot about
uh,
that.
snow indoors. And the
Where's that
makeup.
snow coming from?
Yeah, and those guys from the fun fair keep popping up. But it's one of those the house is coming to life, or in this case, a hotel kind of
Yeah.
movies rather than a slasher film. And it probably would disappoint someone expecting something like New Year's Evil because it's got a title like a slasher
Yeah.
film. But it is fun. It's like a rubber reality post Freddy kind of supernatural horror film, but for a change, British. Yeah, I really enjoyed
If
it.
I would say, if you were to say pick a Norman J. Warren film
Mm.
that you'd say to somebody, oh, you got to watch this film, what would be the one you'd pick?
Oh, I would pick Terror.
Yeah, I'd pick Terror as well.
As much as
But
I like Inseminoid, I think Terror is the one which is really, really good.
but yeah, what is it? Indicator released that box set. It's definitely worth picking up. I believe it's limited. I don't know, maybe 3,000. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how many's probably left. I'm surprised it hasn't sold out already, to be honest,
yeah.
considering what films are in it. But
Their stuff tends to get off the shelves really quickly, and then it goes for crazy money on eBay. Typically, Indicator.
yes, but that's usually because they got really good releases, and it's usually stuff that, a bit like the Norman J. Warren one. Other than was it Anchor Bay released his films early 2000s in that Coffin
Yeah,
box set.
that's
Other
right.
than that, I don't think it's really had any
No.
legitimate releases over here. So
And this one, this set carries over. I think it carries over all of the extras from the old ones, but it's got a whole bunch of new ones as well. So it's presumably the one to get, if you haven't got the old coffin set and want an
yeah,
upgrade.
exactly. But yes, definitely worth picking up. Watched anything else? I said the only thing I've watched recently was Candy Corn, which if you are going to, by the time this podcast has been released, it will be showing at the Halloween event of Fright Fest, which is from the 2nd of November. I think it's
Yes.
the first film opening of that. So we've seen it already. So
Yes. I'm not going to say anything about Candy Corn. Here's a line from the film, though, just without giving away any opinions. There were a lot of asses last night. Some of them got kicked. Some of them got sticked. That was Candy Corn.
that's Candy Corn.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna give anything away because everybody's entitled to their opinions.
Yes.
But yeah, other than that, I haven't really watched anything because I've been so busy doing other things. So it's all about you. But it sounds like you've been watching some sort of more older stuff recently.
I've had nothing else to do. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it's so lonely. If anyone's out there. Yeah, to a degree. I have watched some older stuff. I've watched some new stuff. Like I watched something which isn't horror, but probably fits into horror just by virtue of how much gore it has. Is the new Rambo film, Last Blood, which
That looks awesome.
which it's one of those films where you watch it and it's obviously a mainstream release because it's a Rambo film, but you watch it and there's a point where I was thinking, wow, do they know actually what they've released? How'd they get away with this? It's the kind of film that never would have got through uncut in the 80s. Yeah, Last Blood is mad. Last Blood is clearly a film where, and I think it's been 11 years since the last Rambo, which itself was a kind of bloodfest. But
so I watched that. I watched that one at the cinema.
Yeah, that's great, wasn't it?
And I thought that would be the end of it. That would be like, because to me that seemed like this is the end of the Rambo films.
Yeah.
To me, but according to what I read of interviews and things, the title "Last Blood" doesn't necessarily signify that this is the last Rambo film.
No, no, that's true. You get a sense that there could be Last Blood Part 2 to go along with the First Blood Part 2 that came out before.
Exactly.
But it's mad. You could watch it and you realize, you think, wait a minute. I guess at some point Sylvester Stallone sat around thinking, Taken seems to be doing quite well.
Yeah.
The Saw movies seem quite popular. Home Alone's really good. And he put all of them in one film.
Yeah. But he's done quite well because you got Rocky, Rambo, The Expendables. That's a good.
Yeah.
What's that prison? Oh, Escape Plan. Escape Plan
franchise. Yeah, it's well. Yeah. He has, and the great thing about him is that he's doing. I mean, Last Blood is basically an old-fashioned action movie, stroke splatter movie. But in the meantime, he's had loads of great reviews for being really genuinely good in the Creed films. So he's still doing great stuff as an actor and actually getting recognition for it. But he's also going back to, I suppose, the more this is closer to exploitation type stuff like Last Blood.
Yeah.
With a dash of something like Logan, I suppose, because he's playing his own age in the film.
That's a good film. Logan is a good film.
Logan is tremendous. Yeah, I like Logan. But Last Blood is a definite recommend, especially if you want a lot of gore with your Rambo.
Oh, yes. So, other than that, got anything else you want to mention that people may be interested in?
Quick shout out for Ready or Not, which is a really great horror film that came out in the UK 2 weeks ago in the cinema, probably America a few weeks earlier. Really good. It's by the guys who go by the name of Radio Silence and did part of Southbound and part of VHS.
All right, okay.
They also did that dodgy film Devil's Due, which wasn't really that great, but this is great. This is like one of those American horror films, which is all about what a bunch of bastards the rich are. So the heroine is Samara Weaving, who was really good in Mayhem, and she's got married into this rich family. And one of their traditions is on the night of the wedding, when she joins the family, is to play a big game of hide and seek, which just happens to involve them hunting her down with a bunch of old-fashioned weapons because they think that they need to use her for some kind of traditional ritualistic sacrifice. It's better than I make it sound, and it's kind of a black comedy, but it's got a tremendously gory finish, and quite unusual for watching a horror film in Norwich. At the cinema I watched it, it actually got cheers at the very end.
There you go. So it's definitely one to put on people's watch list then.
I think so. I think it's had great reviews. I don't know if it's it's come out at a time when too much other stuff is out, but Ready or Not is really worth seeing.
That is the trouble nowadays. There's so much more coming out across streaming sites, online, and all this kind of stuff that sometimes stuff just gets buried underneath it all, and then when it eventually comes out, you watch it and you're like, well, why didn't this get such a big hype? But it's the beast. the Hollywood beast.
Yeah, and it doesn't have a great trailer either. I think the trailer sells it short. Which, when you're selling about 3 million films at the same time, the trailer's got to catch your eye.
Yeah.
The movie's better than the trailer, anyway.
Well, that's always a plus. Instead of having your 5 best scenes in a trailer and watching the film and thinking, that wasn't really worth it, was it?
Yeah. I watched before, I've forgotten what it was. There was a trailer for Terminator Dark Fate at the cinema the other day. And as well as the trailer, they said, "Oh, here's an exclusive preview." And
I've seen that.
The preview, the preview was a whole sequence from the film followed by the trailer, which gives away what I think suspiciously look like all of the big sequences of action and special effects in the film. So, well, thanks. That's great. I don't have to watch it. Thanks so much.
There you go. Does look good though.
Oh, it looks really good. Yeah, no, I'm really up for that.
But so yeah, that's all you've been watching recently. Now we are going to give you lucky listeners something to win, which I've seen the series, I've seen the stuff that's based on as well. So the prize that we're giving away is The Haunting of Hill House Season 1 on DVD.
Oh.
But not just that, we are also giving away the book by Shirley Jackson. From 1959. So we won't actually give you the 1959 book, because I'm sure that's probably worth a bit now. But we will be giving you a copy of the book as well.
And it'll be dog-eared.
Well, there's that as well. But yeah, so you have a brand new copy of the paperback. So the series is loosely based on the book, but I thought it was really well done. It's definitely something I would watch again.
Yeah, the series is great. The series is one of the best horror series of ages, right? It's the last few years.
Well, certainly something I can't really think of it off the top of my head at the moment that I would watch again. Like you finish watching it and go, "Oh, I want to watch it again."
Yeah.
Well, then for me, it's one of those series, but it won't be for everybody because, of course, people would have read the book. Would have, like most things, you would read the book and you'd be like, "Oh, this scene's not in there, or that's not in there." But that happens with everything. But if you would like to win the DVD, which is a Region 2 copy, and the book, so you win 2 things, all you have to do is let us know what you think of this first episode of the Horror Screens podcast. And then we will pick a winner on the next episode, which will be on the last Friday of November, which is the 29th. So put that in your calendar. Now then. Now we're going to jump into a big thing. A very big franchise of films.
Oh, yeah.
Which originally only started off as a 1 film. Then, of course, did so well, made a sequel. Then several sequels later. It has 3 films that are called the same title. just to confuse things. It has... I wouldn't say they're remakes. They're it's a reboot, I suppose. That's what it is. That some people may or may not like. But we are going to talk about Halloween. So, what is your starting point on the Halloween franchise?
The starting point on the Halloween franchise. I think the best starting point with the Halloween franchise is a reminder that for all the people that were like, "Whoa, these remakes are rubbish, Rob Zombie," should remember that the first Halloween is a total rip-off of loads of films that came before it. So as great as the original Halloween is, and it's one of my all-time favorites, we shouldn't forget that what John Carpenter was doing was basically taking a bit of a bit of Psycho, a bit of Peeping Tom, a bit of Blood and Black Lace, and Blood and Lace, and Deep Red and Black Christmas, and putting it all together at the time where there was a real audience for kind of teenage horror after Carrie and things like that.
That's what people not in our community, but people from that I'll watch a horror film and they go, "Oh, what's the first slasher film?" Most people would say Halloween.
Yeah.
They would say that's Halloween, which is fair because it was the one that pretty much kicked off the genre. But really, it's Black Christmas from 1974.
Sure.
For me, that's the big slasher film.
Yeah, Black Christmas is massive, and I think Carpenter admitted that Black Christmas was a big inspiration. But before that, there was loads of stuff. You know, the Giallo films famously had sequences that slasher films in America basically remade. You know,
Yep.
Friday the 13th especially remade key scenes from Bay of Blood or Part 2 of Friday the 13th as well. And Halloween is very influenced by the Italian stuff. But also older stuff like Peeping Tom has that famous opening sequence, which is all from the killer's point of view, which is where Halloween begins.
Well, we mentioned Black Christmas. Of course, it had its remake in 2006. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
And this year, there's another remake coming out of it. So you had the one in 74. So roughly 30 years later, you had the remake. And less than that, you've got another remake of the same film.
Yeah.
So is it really worth it? But hey, I'm gathering there must be some reason they're doing it, and I hope you do something different.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not going to talk about Black Christmas. We're going to talk about Halloween, which started in 1978.
Oh.
Yep, all that long time ago.
The year I was born.
Oh. There you go. There's a fun fact for everybody.
What a great year.
So, I would be interested to know if you was to rate all 11 films, put it in your top 11 films, so the worst Halloween film at the bottom, and number one being obviously the best Halloween movie. What's your list? What would you put it in? I could tell you what my because I haven't actually seen the 2018 one yet, but for me the worst movie of the Halloween franchise was Resurrection.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Halloween Resurrection is the only one which is just totally awful.
That's the one where if you haven't seen it, they set it in Michael Myers' homestead, and they are shooting a reality show in there, which is I think it's streamed across the internet.
Yeah.
But what happens if you've seen H2O? And then you get Resurrection, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here?
That's the worst thing. They actually, at some point in the script meeting, they were like, well, Michael Myers had his head chopped off. Oh, hang on a minute. Bill at the back, Bill's from accounts. He's just walked in with an idea. Yeah. Let's say it was the paramedic that had his head chopped off. He just happened to be wearing the mask at the time. Bill, thanks for stopping by.
But if you watch Halloween H2O, which I think is quite a good film, but
it's really good.
That's part of the Scream did its resurgence of the horror franchise. H2O pretty much fits into that category of aiming for the teen market because there isn't as many kills in that one as opposed to later or earlier ones, which I'll tell you later which one has the most kills in it, and it's not the one you think it might be. But H2O, as you mentioned, it has Michael ends up killing a paramedic towards the end of the film, crushes his larynx, chops off his head, sticks his mask on, manages to put all his clothes on, which just so happens to be the same size as Michael, and then he casually just walks off towards the end of the film, which happens in about 2 minutes. And Laurie's just like, oh my god, Michael's still alive. What? It doesn't make sense as a plot point, especially when you get Resurrection, and he's kind of they kind of whitewash it. Yeah, that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
It's just terrible. And they bring back Jamie Lee Curtis for Halloween Resurrection just so they can kill her off in the first 10 minutes. I mean, it's potentially a good idea there because she's now in the asylum herself, which is quite a nice way of taking the franchise full circle. But she's just there so he can turn up and basically have one last battle. And Halloween Resurrection is one of those sequels where you realize that when people talk about the Halloween mythology or are upset by the Rob Zombie films, it doesn't really matter because most of the sequels say, hang on a minute, what happened in that other one didn't really happen. We've got our own idea, so the last 6 didn't happen. What? Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter because they're making it up as they go along just so they can keep making them.
Yeah. It has its moments, but for me it is the worst of the whole franchise.
Yeah.
But hey,
Busta Rhymes is in it as well.
Does he get killed in that? I've only seen it a couple of times. One side, like, you look on your shelf, you go, oh, watch a Halloween. Yeah, I'm not gonna watch that one today.
I think Buster Rhymes survives. Michael Myers gets burned again.
Yes,
And Buster Rhymes says trick or treat melon farmer. That's slightly changed from the original version.
yes.
And it's got a bunch of teen actors from kind of teen movies of the time. I've forgotten their names, but I think it's got like a guy from American Pie, and Tyra Banks is in it. It's just really bad. And it's even worse because, like you said, Halloween H2O is actually a really good comeback for the series. And they rushed this one out to cash in, but they didn't really think it through.
It wasn't long after, was it? What was
No.
H2O was 98, so
98, yeah.
4 years, 2002.
Yeah.
That's plenty. That would have been plenty of time to write a good script.
Yeah, you'd think, right?
But so, when was the first time you watched the first Halloween?
The first Halloween, the very first Halloween.
When I say the first one, I mean the actual first one, not the first one, which is the Rob Zombie one, or the first one, which is a new one.
So this is the one called Halloween, right? But not the
Halloween.
That
Halloween.
That one.
Halloween 1978.
Oh, that one. Oh, God, yeah. The first Halloween, I watched loads of horror movies when I was really little because my parents were fine with that. And I remember being really freaked out by a trailer for Halloween because it was always showing on ITV. So I saw the trailer first of all. And although I wasn't scared of that many horror films, I was really spooked by the trailer. It didn't show much, but it showed the mask and it showed the pumpkin and stuff. And I reckon when I finally watched the whole film, I was probably about 7, I think. And I taped it on, like a Memorex tape that then became my only way of watching Halloween for about 15 years, taped from ITV with adverts and not in widescreen. So when I finally watched the film in widescreen when I was much older, I was like, wow, Michael Myers is in this film loads at the corner of the screen. Because, of course, he was cut off on TV.
I don't know when you watched it, but there's the scene where Michael, it reveals his face.
Yeah.
But whenever I've seen copies of it before, digital and all that,
yeah,
it was always quite a dark image. To me, it was like, oh, you can reveal his face, but you don't really see it. And now you go, oh, there's his face.
Yeah. It's quite white. Yeah, it's. I suppose Halloween's one of those films where, because some films I don't think it matters. Like I think actually Texas Chainsaw Massacre probably feels best suited to a grotty VHS tape, where because the film is really uncomfortable and it's an ordeal, in the best way. But Halloween I think really benefits from the HD-ness of recent releases because you see stuff you haven't seen before, and it's a nice looking film like most John Carpenter films.
So of course after the first one, which do I give people a brief rundown of what happens in the first film? Most people have probably seen it, but people know what happens.
Sure. The first one, Michael Myers is a kid that at the age of, I think he's 6, in the first scene of Halloween, he stabs his sister. You don't realize it's a kid until the camera pulls away because the whole thing is from his point of view. So at the end of that very first sequence, the camera pulls back. His parents turn up conveniently to take his mask off. They stare at him for a while, which is a bit weird, rather than doing Michael. Then cue 20-minute camera shot. Hang on. He's basically watched his sister have very, very short and quick sex with her boyfriend, and when the boyfriend's left after 10 seconds, goes upstairs and stabs her. And it's quite shocking. It's the only kind of real blood in the film, isn't it? Because you see her on the floor with blood over her chest.
Apparently, it's a minute that they're on the sofa, have a little chat. He runs upstairs with her, do whatever they got to do, and then the guy goes.
Yeah, he says, fantastic, thank you. Oh, see you next time.
Yeah. So.
She presumably finishes herself off, and then she's finished off. And then it cuts to 15 years later, and he escapes from the asylum, heads to Haddonfield, and which is his hometown, and starts stalking a bunch of teenagers from the late 70s.
Yeah. Which, of course, probably got the most famous scream queen in it, in some people's eyes.
Yeah.
But of course, this film did surprisingly well considering its budget. So naturally, what would happen after that? Somebody came along and said, "We want a sequel." So in 1981, you had Halloween 2, which opens with.
Yeah, Halloween 2 is a rare one because it actually, unlike most of the slasher sequels, in fact, probably nearly all of them, it picks off exactly where the last one ended off, to the point where they recreated it. So they had to reshoot stuff, give Jamie Lee Curtis a wig so she looked the same, even though she's 3 years older and got different hair. And they picked it up exactly the point where Michael fell off the balcony. Loomis looks at the thing and Michael's already gone. And then, in some of my favorite moments, actually, from Halloween 2, Michael goes around the neighborhood just kind of randomly picking off a couple of people before he heads to the hospital where Laurie's been taken in a state of, I guess, convincing. Well, she's in shock, isn't she, in Halloween 2?
Yeah. Which, no, considering what she's seen, is not really surprising.
Yeah. It does mean, unfortunately, the one negative of Halloween 2 that stands out is that she spends most of the film on her back in a hospital bed, because she's catatonic for quite a long stretch of the film, which is convincing given what she's been through. But this is the woman, this is the final girl that was so great in the first one. Not a lot to do, but I suppose it's more realistic than having her up and about for the whole film.
Well, I don't know what she got paid for the sequel, but for the first film, apparently she got paid $8,000.
Blimey.
And Donald Pleasance got paid $25,000. He was the most paid actor for that film.
It's outrageous. Donald Pleasance.
Yeah. You think Dr. Loomis could have been played by Christopher Lee or Peter Cushing.
Yeah, that's strange, isn't it? Donald Pleasance is perfect because there's a sense in the first one, especially. Donald Pleasance is always slightly sinister, but he's got quite a gentle voice. There's a sense that Dr. Loomis is as scared as anybody else in the first one. He's hanging around, and you realize that he's really frightened as well, because this was his patient and he doesn't really know what he's going to do next. And he realized he's messed up because the patient's got loose and he was meant to be under his care. So I like what Donald Pleasance. I can't imagine Christopher Lee doing it as well, or he would be very different. The whole film would change with Christopher Lee.
That would be what I would have said as well. Christopher Lee doing it would be in a completely different film. Peter Cushing probably could have pulled it off, because he is, even though people think of him as the mild-mannered actor.
Yeah,
you see him in Hammer's Frankenstein, or even Corruption, which some people probably haven't even heard of. It's Peter Cushing doing something completely different than what you're used to. So he might have pulled it off, but I definitely think Donald Pleasance was the best option.
Yeah. And he went on to work with Carpenter a lot. He gets to wear a wig and go crazy with a machine gun, escape from New York, and which is maybe his best ever Carpenter moment. And he's in Prince of Darkness and stuff. So yeah, it was a nice start to his career in later years with John Carpenter.
So of course, as far as we are aware, towards the end of Halloween 2, Michael Myers is no more. So of course, because that does reasonably well at the cinema, the people who give the money to make the films decided they wanted to make a third film, but it's going to be completely different. And it's called Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, which doesn't actually feature Michael Myers at all.
Yeah.
That's apart from one scene. He doesn't actually feature in the film himself, but somebody's watching Halloween on telly.
Yeah, which is great. That's another example of the early days, long before Scream, of slasher movies or horror movies referencing themselves. So even as early as Halloween 3, characters are watching in the film of Halloween, in the story of Halloween 3, they're watching a scene from the actual earlier film in the same franchise. So yeah,
I've always had this thing of saying to people that, what do you think of Halloween 3? As we know, a lot of people do not like Halloween 3 because it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. And I always say that if it was just released as Season of the Witch, had no tie-in to Halloween at all, it probably would have done perfectly fine. But because it's called Halloween, people are expecting Michael Myers to turn up, and that was a disappointment behind it.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Is that fair to say?
Oh, completely. Yeah. It's a shame, really. I mean, it's got a great, the tagline is great because it plays on the tagline of the original, which was the night he comes home, and in Halloween 3 it becomes the night no one came home, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's only a Halloween film in the sense of John Carpenter realized there was nothing else they could do that was interesting with Michael Myers. He's dead anyway. Let's do a different story for each Halloween film just set around Halloween. And that was the idea. It was going to be like an anthology series of films. But I think the marketing was a bit rubbish. And as you said, people at this time were just confused. Oh, Michael Myers? No? So
there's always other people in masks, but not Michael Myers.
Yeah. So it's actually really, I find it, because as much as I love Halloween 3, the depressing thing is the one time that they gave the series something original, people didn't like it. So they went back.
Yeah, that's the thing. People always, something starts off, starts a franchise. People go, "Oh, I wish they'd do something different." And like you just said, in this case, they dared to do something different, and then people didn't like it.
Yeah. And
hey, how dare you give us what we want, but it's not what we wanted. We want something different.
For God's sake. Yeah. And you can't imagine it. I mean, it didn't really happen. It didn't happen with any of the other franchises. I suppose the nearest Friday the 13th got to it was the episode where it's the killer is somebody else because Jason's dead and it's the paramedic, Roy the paramedic. But even that's a very Jason-like killer. And in this, it's a totally different story that just happens to be set around Halloween, and it's all about the history of Halloween and about, it's about a mad toy maker in a country that has, America that is, has turned Halloween into a kind of consumerist festival.
Hey, you're forgetting the point that they brought one of the stones from Stonehenge over.
Yeah, there's a great moment. You realise the plot dictates that they've to do their mission, which is to kind of bump off every kid in America through a TV signal. But to do that, they need a stone from Stonehenge. And at the point where you're thinking, how'd they manage that? The Conor Cochran character says, "You won't believe how we got it here." Yeah,
it's the way he says it there. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a great film, isn't it?
It's a great film. It's got a brilliant soundtrack. It's outside of the first film, it's the one I watch the most. As you know, it's the one I watch every Halloween. I have to watch every Halloween. Yeah. But of course, people didn't think much of it, even though it's got a really good cast. Tom Atkins being a guy who, of course, wants to try and solve what's going on, but he picks up a girl and just gets on with it.
It's great, isn't it? I like the fact that maybe the funniest thing, it reminds me of City of the Living Dead, where the whole of life on Earth is at stake, but Christopher George stops off for a sandwich. In this, Tom Atkins realizes that he's got a very limited time. It's a race against time, but he's too busy shagging to really get to it. It's because he's a womanizing.
It's a great film though, and
that's brilliant.
If you've never watched it because it hasn't got Michael Myers in, try and put it on, watch it, and just imagine it as if it was just a film on its own. It was just called Season of the Witch. Didn't have Halloween in it. That's probably the best way to watch it if you're anti against the film. For me,
your anti's against the film.
Anti's against the film.
But
of course, it was actually quite a while yet after the Halloween 3 came out, because of course it didn't do as well as it did, but now it's got quite a big cult following behind it. Halloween 4 came in 1988, which has probably Halloween's second biggest screen queen, I guess, Danielle Harris.
Yeah.
But would you say this is at the top end of your top 10? Well, in your case, top 11 Halloween films, or for me, it's number 3.
Number 3. Okay, interesting. For me, it would be lower down. I used to like it a lot more than I do now. I think I watched it when I was younger and I thought it was brilliant. Maybe because the Danielle Harris character in it was about my age when I first watched it. She's maybe 11 or something.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah,
maybe a bit younger. I'm not sure, but it felt more scary because I was like, oh Christ, they've actually got a child, and it's quite bold because you're under no kind of illusion that she's in real danger. And maybe it doesn't hold up as well for me, but it's still a nice attempt to kind of go back to the original. It's more about the suspense. It's away from the hospital of Halloween 2, so it's more about going back to Haddonfield, and it does feel like Haddonfield 10 years on. It's got a nice atmosphere about it.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, and it's got that great title sequence, which really feels like autumn and Halloween. That really beautiful opening title sequence, I think, sets the scene really well.
Jamie Lloyd is her name.
Jamie Lloyd. Yeah.
But interestingly, Melissa Joan Hart, who would go on to play Sabrina the Teenage Witch, auditioned for the role.
Ah, wow.
See, that would have been an interesting film.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a strange film because it's the first time, and it happens later with Resurrection, but this is the first of the Halloween sequels to kill off Jamie Lee Curtis. In this film, this pathway of the series, she's been killed in between the films, and Jamie Lloyd is her daughter.
Jamie Lee Curtis's character, if you look at it as a sequel thing and what's going on, she doesn't do very well, does she? She gets killed off quite a lot of times.
Yes. It's a fun film. Donald Pleasance is back. He's got a bit of a scar on his face and a limp because he survived being blown up in the second one. But
don't worry, he's not the only one that survived.
Yeah, Michael Myers, he was shot in the eyes. Yeah, I like the idea of them a routine transfer from prison to prison. We'll put two not very good security guards in the back.
You have the keys, and you look after the gun as well. You'll be fine.
It's almost like an Austin Powers style, easily escapable scenario for Michael Myers at the start of Halloween 4.
One of those walk-out prison scenarios, but you'll be back later. Yeah, of course I will.
Just going for some tea, sausage roll. And he goes out. And I quite like the idea. Halloween 4 does something quite cool, which is you get the sense that, oh yeah, this town really went through a bunch of bad stuff 10 years ago, and it's got the kind of local lynch mob who are rubbish because they shoot dead and innocent man, just these rednecks that are on the loose with their shotguns. But you get the sense that, well, actually, if this really was a real town that had a massacre 10 years ago, then people probably would be very twitchy.
Yes, they would. So would you be fair to say that 4, 5, and 6 are basically a trilogy on their own?
Yeah, 4, 5, and 6, a bit like 1 and 2, do attempt to have a continuing story. And I think it's the point where 6 maybe wrote itself into a corner, and Donald Pleasance died as well, that they realized, oh, bugger, we've got to redo everything. Forget the other ones. Christ, we're going back. But 4, 5, and 6 is quite an interesting attempt, like you said, as a continuing story, while Donald Pleasance was still around.
It's one of them trilogy, like a trilogy. Again, like Halloween 3. If you got rid of the Halloween title, maybe got rid of the whole Michael Myers storyline, but had it as its separate trilogy as some kind of character with the whole Curse of Thorn storyline coming up, it probably would have worked. But because it's Halloween and what happens to it doesn't really work. Because of course, towards number 6, they say that that's the reason behind his immortality or something along those lines. So Halloween 4 ended. Then you get Halloween 5, which of course Danielle Harris comes back, but she is not talking in this one.
Which is a real shame because 4 has such a great ending. I always thought 4, if they were going to end the series at this point, they should have done, because 4 has that great ending where Michael's dead again, and it's actually Jamie Lloyd that stabs her mum in the bath because she's been influenced by his evilness. But Five does the classic sequel thing of saying, "Well,
You know,
actually, she's gone a bit mad and she can't talk anymore, but Michael's back, and it's kind of business as usual. The mum survived being stabbed in the bath, and yeah, Michael gets rescued from like the well by this kind of old guy that takes care of him for a year for some reason.
yeah.
Come back to my place. I'll look after you."
So this was 1989, so it's only a year after the first Halloween 4.
Yeah, 4 did super well. Like I remember reading 4 was a real big box office hit at a time when horror was probably, kind of fading a bit. But 4 was a popular movie, so they rushed out number 5.
Then, is there any key points you want to point out in Halloween 5, other than the fact that Jamie Lloyd doesn't talk and Michael is back, because that's an obvious thing?
Yeah, 5 is interesting. I don't think 5 is not as good as 4 in a lot of ways, but 5 does some interesting things. Like it does, I suppose, the psycho thing of killing off Ellie Cornell really early on. She's along with Jamie, she's the heroine of number 4, and she's kind of cruelly killed off about half an hour in. It also remembers, I think, probably in ways that 2 and 4 don't, but it remembers that Michael, more than killing people, he actually really enjoys just scaring people and dressing up, and he spends a lot of number 5 doing that. He wears that ridiculous mask for a while to trick the boyfriend that he's just killed off of, I think it's Wendy Kaplan's character. He hangs around in a barn just like jumping out at regular moments. So yeah, I think there's some nice continuity with the first one. But also, 5 is the one where Donald Pleasance has gone completely batshit mad.
Yep.
To a kind of disturbing degree. He's harassing the little girl on the bed at the hospital, and he's bashing Michael with a bit of wood at the end for a long, long time.
Yes. Is it Halloween 5 that, I think it's the only Halloween film that Michael uses a gun to kill somebody? I don't mean actually shooting somebody. He's like impales somebody on a gun. Is it Halloween 5 or is it?
Oh, I think that's 4, because it's the tarty, busty sheriff's daughter that he shoves the gun through.
He uses a shotgun or something, shoves it right through.
Yeah. There's a sense that they're trying to, because he was always a knife killer in the first 2 films, but I suppose he does other things in number 2 maybe. But yeah, in 5 he's using a pitchfork.
Yeah.
He uses a scythe as well, I think. And he uses what's that claw thing that he gets the guy who's got the fancy car, he shoves that in his head.
Oh,
5 is...
I know what you're talking about, but yeah.
I don't know what
to rake out weeds and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So,
yeah.
So that's Halloween 5. Then, of course, we jump to 1995 with Halloween 6. So we finished the 80s with a string of Halloween sequels. We're now in the mid-90s. Halloween 6 comes out, which has its own storyline, really.
Yeah.
In terms of not just on screen, but also what was going behind scenes as well. Because, of course, you've got the 2 different cuts, which arguably people either prefer the producer's cut or the original cut. I quite like the producer's cut. Is that the one you prefer, or do you prefer the original cut?
Yeah, the producer's cut is much better. They clearly messed it around a lot, and it loses quite a bit of story, because the one they released doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
But in the producer's cut, you do kind of understand that Michael is a part of this cult built around the Thorn thing. You understand
it's all about the moon.
Yeah, you understand that Loomis, who just kind of screams at the end of the other version, but you realize that he's kind of meant to be the one that takes over as the new caretaker of Michael, in place of the guy that was the Man in Black, who was the guy from the 5th one.
You mean the guy who's in black, who you never actually ever see anything of? And then, was that a strange, Pink Panther Shadow Man wandering behind everybody?
Who is that? Is that Jeff from the Green Grove? No, I don't know. This is not a plot device, is it? No. How is this just to get him out of jail at the end? No. So there's a lot. I imagine a bunch of people came to Halloween 6 and maybe didn't see 5 or forgot about 5 and like, huh? what? When did this happen?
I've watched Halloween, but now I've jumped onto Halloween 6. Oh, they went on Halloween, Halloween 3, and Halloween 6. I thought, what the hell is this series doing?
And I suppose the good thing is, maybe with a bit like number 3, is at least they were trying something different. It doesn't really work.
No.
And it works even less when they tampered with it, and you've got the the producer's cut is better for kind of a story, but at least they were trying something different. But the problem I always had with Michael being Jamie Laurie's brother in the second one, which is when they revealed that, is that he was much scarier when he was just a random killer. So
yeah, I'd agree with that.
To link him to having a purpose, it makes it, that's not as scary. Yeah, in the first one, I thought he could be after anyone, including me.
Yeah. As I mentioned, for me, 4, 5, and 6 works as a trilogy. But if if it wasn't called Halloween, maybe it's just called The Curse of Thorn, and then it had their own characters, which had nothing to do with Halloween, it probably would have worked. But because it's got Halloween in the course from the first film, you're like, oh, this is, as you said, this lumbering guy randomly going around killing people, and then he suddenly becomes a family man. He's related to people, and then in Halloween 6, he's after a baby, if I recall correctly.
Well, that's the really icky thing. The really thing that I don't know if anybody really stopped to think about it. Or maybe again at a script meeting, somebody said, "Hold on a minute." Is the idea, from what I can tell, is that in between 5 and 6, Michael has basically fathered Jamie's baby, and the baby is now the baby that the cult wants, because they worship Thorn, which is the symbol on his wrist, this big cult. But the idea is that Jamie, who the movie doesn't really care about because it kills off anyway, and she's no longer played by Danielle Harris, who was really bitter about it.
It's JC Brandy.
But that's right, yeah. Everybody remembers JC Brandy. But the idea is that Michael presumably had, I can only guess, non-consensual sex with Jamie Lloyd sometime after Halloween 5.
Well, I'm gathering it has to be something, because I can't see him being much of a talkative type of person. I can't see any one-liners coming out of him to try and chat her up.
He could have taken her to some fancy place, like in Haddonfield, like whatever Haddonfield's fancy restaurant is.
Oh, well, yeah, you never know. It's just one of the things they missed out writing. Maybe somebody will do a fan film about it, about how it became. We never know. But yeah, I think there's in what I consider probably the goriest death in all the Halloween franchise, excluding the Rob Zombie ones.
Yeah.
Jamie Lloyd's character probably gets the most gruesome death, because there's a bit where I think they go into like a barn or something, and she's creeping around in the barn. She stands on some, I don't know, twigs or something. Michael goes, "Ooh, I hear that," and chases after her, stabs her, gets her impaled on some kind of shredding farming machinery, and then she says, "You can't have the baby," which he just goes, and then she reaches out to him or something for some reason, and he just comes up to her, pushes her, impales her even further, and then he turns on the machine so she gets chopped up in it.
Yeah.
Which you don't really see much of that, but it's the idea, you know what's going on. So for me, it's probably the goriest in the whole series.
Yeah, it's up there, isn't it? And interestingly, in the producer's cut, she's just stabbed, and she spends most of the film alive, but in the hospital. So that was one of the things that they changed for the cinema release, was to have more kind of gory deaths, which are not really Michael's style, but this is a different direction for the series anyway. So,
well, it's a different decade as well. They want to try and push boundaries as well, don't they?
Sex him up.
Yep, sex him up. That's it.
Sexy Michael. He's a real player in Halloween too. You can imagine him down at the clinic. Oh, who's the father? Michael. Oh, another one. Christ.
Oh, Michael.
Putting it all around town.
So, do you want to let people know what happens at the end of Halloween 6?
Halloween 6 is mental, and if you watch the original ending in the cinema release, it's very confusing, because you just kind of see there's a big massacre at the hospital. It's got an ending that's a bit like number 5, where characters, including Loomis, take it in turns to basically bash Michael Myers over the head with something heavy. Oh fuck, die! Oh shit, he's done.
He would die. Well, I shot him loads of times the first time. He's still not dying.
And
And he's
then
blown up.
and then you just basically hear Donald Pleasance screaming off camera, which doesn't make a lot of sense, while it cuts to the surviving characters, one of whom is Paul Rudd, who of course later became Ant-Man in the very good Marvel Comics films.
I think this is maybe his first role in this film.
Yeah.
Talking of people that had their first role, Josh Hartnett has his first role in maybe H2O.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Or those two.
So, I think that's his first. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And
quite a few people started off in Halloween films first.
Yeah. And of course, with Paul Rudd's character in Halloween 6, he's the grown-up version of Tommy Doyle, who's the kid that Jamie Lee Curtis babysits in the original. So there's quite a lot of crossover, and you get this a bit in Halloween 4, where they mention Lindsay from the first one. So they're at least trying to keep things consistent. But yeah, 6 goes mad at the end. From what we can gather from like the producer's cut, the idea is that Dr. Wynn was the kind of leader of the cult who needed Michael and the baby. Dr. Wynn gets killed, and Dr. Loomis becomes like the caretaker instead of Dr. Wynn. And Dr. Loomis looks at his wrist in the producer's cut, and he realizes he's now got the same symbol as Michael has.
Yep.
And then, for no apparent reason, Michael has a costume change and wears the black costume that the Dr. Wynn character was wearing before, and wanders out of the hospital. So you can only assume that the people looking at the next, like Mustafa Akkad, thinking of what the next film could be, is like, oh God, how do we carry this on from here?
Well, obviously it didn't quite work out, because it taken another 7 years until no, it wasn't. It was 2 years, 3 years actually. 3 years later, it would be 98. Halloween H2O came out, which again is changed. It's another kind of like a soft reboot of the series.
It is,
apart from the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis turns up and Michael Myers. But this is post-Scream coming out. It's only a couple of years after Scream coming out, and it's definitely aimed for the sort of teen market. I think this is the one that's got the least deaths in it out of all the Halloween films. Could be wrong. It might be Resurrection. But
yeah, that sounds about right, actually.
So, what was your first thoughts when they're going to say, "Oh, we're going to make another Halloween film"? It's 20 years after the first film.
Yeah, I was actually really excited. I remember, because I was a huge fan of the Halloween films, and even quite defensive of Part 6 for a while. And maybe it doesn't hold up as well, but yeah, I was really excited because I was very sad Donald Pleasance had died in between films. I think number 6 was his last film, and
it was.
In fact, I don't think he completely finished filming on number 6 before he died. I think there was something.
I believe that he shot what he had to shoot, but then they did like the test run of it, like a test audience, and they went, "Ooh, don't think much of this." So they was going to do obviously the new cut, and they wanted to do some reshots, but Donald Pleasance wasn't well, and then he died. So
yeah, and it's quite sad. I mean, I like the fact that Donald Pleasance always came back, and he didn't ever really slate the Halloween films. He was quite good natured about coming back, and I think he liked playing Dr. Loomis, and he was very he's kind of a regular fixture of the series. But yeah, I was really excited for Halloween H2O, and I remember watching it in the cinema back in 1998. Like you said, Scream had come out. I know you did last summer, so there was the whole revival of slasher films. But
Urban Legend, Valentine.
Urban Legend, yeah, of course. So it was that period in the 90s where for the first time in ages, you actually had like regular horror films back in the cinema. Mm-hmm. And not all of them were that good, but at least horror films were back in the cinema. That was my thinking. And H2O came along. It had a great trailer. Jamie Lee was back for the first time since Halloween 2.
Yep.
The whole idea was quite cool, which was basically them saying, we may have gone off a bit with the other ones. Let's pretend they didn't happen. This is a sequel to Halloween 2, so they
Hey,
ignored
but don't worry, that would be the first time they pretend that nothing happened.
Yeah, this will never happen again. But just forget what you've seen the last 17 years. And it does some. Yeah, I watched it in cinema, and it was actually a really good experience. I thought it worked really well. The good thing about it was that it doesn't get bogged down in too much kind of smug kind of, oh, cool. Isn't it funny that we know that we're in horror film stuff, because some of the Scream stuff that came out after Scream were a bit self-conscious, but this one was mostly just a straight Halloween film, with Jamie Lee playing Laurie as a kind of washed up alcoholic teacher who is still really traumatized by her experience, now has a teenage son of her own.
Yep.
And of course, Michael Myers is back. But there's some really great character stuff of just showing how messed up she is. Although being Jamie Lee, she gets to play her as this really likable, kind of funny, sassy character, despite being haunted by what she went through. So it's probably my favorite Jamie Lee Curtis performance as Laurie, even more than the recent one. I really like H2O.
Oh, yeah, I'd agree with that. I look at that as well. But I did wonder how many people, when it was first going to come out, or even now, they go, Halloween H2O? It's Halloween underwater. Wow, it's like deep sea.
Then in space.
Halloween in a hood.
Yeah.
So yeah, you had that, which I always thought, like you said, was a really good film. And then 4 years later, even though we think Michael's dead again,
Yeah.
Halloween Resurrection, as we briefly mentioned earlier, it's not a great film.
I think what you can say about Halloween Halloween Resurrection is that it's a film that even LL Cool J didn't come back for.
Yeah, I mean, as most films, I'm sure it has its fans, and it may even be somebody's first introduction to the Halloween franchise, which probably means they didn't watch all the other ones. They probably watched that one and thought that was terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we mentioned that, and of course now we're gonna head into dangerous territory.
Oh, I say.
Yes, dangerous territory where some
gosh.
people do not like these films. They slate them to pieces. And of course, we are talking about the 2007 and 2009 film Halloween and Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie, who I think is actually a really good director.
Yeah.
But I'm going to let you take Halloween and Halloween 2 of Rob Zombie's, because I actually quite like them as well, but you're quite a big fan of them. So
yeah,
sell them to the people.
Oh God, me. Yeah, actually, I really like the poster of the Rob Zombie Halloween. The poster with the massive Michael Myers head, and he's standing in front of it, and the head is like a collage of loads of different images. If you compare it, I mean, this is off track a bit, but that's why we're here. But if you compare that poster, which is really striking, compared to like all of those floating head posters for things like Halloween H2O, which I blame Scream on, because after Scream, every horror film had a floating head poster of just the actors. It's a really great poster for Rob Zombie's Halloween. But yeah, Rob Zombie's Halloween was a big box office hit, and naturally they released it in August in America, which is when you would, of course, release any Halloween film.
Well, as far as I can recall, they didn't want to compete with, of course, this is still when the Saw franchise was quite big. So I believe they didn't want to release it in October.
Yeah.
Stop it from, trying to compete against that, even though it might have probably done quite well. But of course, the Saw franchise was quite a big thing. So maybe most people would have headed towards that as opposed to this one. I don't know.
It's massive. Yeah. And there's a sense of Halloween, the Rob Zombie Halloween, that, I mean, it's a very much a Rob Zombie film, but it's also a film of that time. So it's really brutal, much more brutal than any other Halloween film up to that point. And it's really serious as well. So it's got none of the kind of knockabout humor of H2O, where they bring Janet Leigh in to make a couple of jokes. Oh, it's Janet Leigh. Hello.
Hi,
Mother. And she drives off in the psycho car, and everybody's jolly. Oh yeah, oh, just a little joke for the fans. Halloween is a relentless, nasty, mean-spirited kind of revival of the series. And Rob Zombie's career, at that time, he'd done The Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses, which are very much films about the horror films he loved from the 70s, not just horror films, but especially horror films and exploitation cinema of that period. And it makes sense in a lot of ways that he would make a film like Halloween, because that's his period that he loves and that he's paying tribute to. And what I like about both the Rob Zombie Halloween films is that they're the only sequels in the series that actually feel like they've been made by an individual. Like, if you look at any of the other Halloween sequels, you don't think, "Oh, I do like that Dwight Little Halloween. That's really good." It's very Dwight Little-y, that one. But whether you love it or hate it, you can instantly recognize the Halloween films that Rob Zombie made. And a lot of people hated it. It was fashionable to hate it. It is kind of a remake, although Rob Zombie is more interested in the background of Michael Myers as a child, because it kind of gives him a chance to look at the kind of stuff he likes, which is these awful poor white trash families. So in this case, Michael is the stepson of a horrible William Forsythe, and a really actually quite sympathetic down on her luck Sherry Moon Zombie, who I would argue is really good in Halloween. She's forced to strip and stuff, and she's married to this total bastard. And what Halloween does really well as well is it reinvents Dr. Loomis as this, played by Malcolm McDowell, who's an actor that Zombie used again later on, played as this kind of ridiculous, self-important guy that just wants the attention from being, connected to the Michael Myers case. And he especially blossoms in Halloween 2 a couple of years later. Michael Myers is now the size of a house. He's massive. He's like a wrestler.
He's played by is it Tyler Mane?
Tyler Mane, yeah.
Yeah, and he's 6'9" apparently.
Good Christ!
So that's nearly a foot bigger than Nick Castle.
Everybody in the world, yeah.
So if you had him coming towards you, dead.
Well, that's it. And I think, of course, everything changes because the whole point of Michael in the other films is he's just an ordinary kind of average-sized guy that Laurie has a chance of beating off. Not in that way, of course. That would be weird. But in this, it's all different anyway. It's a Rob Zombie Halloween. So why do we need the Michael from the early ones? Why not have this massive guy? And for the first time, probably in the whole series, there's a real sense of threat from this massive brick shit house version of Michael Myers. What I would say is I do think that in the kind of nasty style of this Rob Zombie Halloween, I do think it doesn't really have the great characters of the original. So there's nobody particularly likable, even amidst Laurie, Annie, and Linda. But then I'm not sure they're meant to be. It's a different kind of Halloween. It's a different world that this one takes place in. So I'm not sure he even really wants them to be that likable. But in a kind of nice touch, it's Daniel Harris that plays the role that Nancy Loomis played in the original. Mm-hmm. Scout Taylor Compton plays Laurie, and Linda is played by, I don't know, someone else. But obviously. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the Rob Zombie Halloween. I think the best, in a way, I almost wish it didn't cut to the 1978 or the modern day stuff, because I think the best stuff is the really quite disturbing stuff where it's Michael as a kid and you see him killing his first person after torturing animals. When it cuts to the more direct remake of the Carpenter stuff, it's maybe too distracting that you're thinking, this is a remake now. I was quite enjoying that.
You would have preferred it as, I don't know. I think there was a time when they was going to do something like this, like Halloween Origins, basically. It's the origins of Myers.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, I presume that he was probably under some pressure to maybe make it more of a direct remake. So I always felt that the first hour is more Rob Zombie and the second hour is more kind of the studio saying, let's reboot that bit. But either way, I like it.
What I've read of Rob Zombie in interviews is he says there's he made a few films, and of course he thought, oh, I'm gonna make Halloween. So naturally, he thought there was going to be pressure. Studio were going to be there doing things. But when it came to making the sequel, he figured, oh, the first film did so well. Of course, the studio wouldn't be on his back as much. But apparently, there was more input from the studio for the second film than there was for the first film.
Yeah, that's typical. Yeah. And what's your thoughts on the very first Rob Zombie Halloween?
I actually quite like it. Like you, I would have preferred if it stuck with like the origin kind of style, because it happens in a few films where I don't know, you'll see an actor playing somebody in a film, and you get, but in your head you're going, I actually want to watch that film now.
Yeah.
But in this case, you're watching the Rob Zombie film, and then like you mentioned, it goes into like the remake reboot kind of territory, and you're like, kind of want to watch the first Halloween now. But I do like it. But I can see why people wouldn't like it though.
Yeah.
Because Rob Zombie has a certain style of filmmaking, which doesn't appeal to everybody. It's my kind of filmmaking, but as we said, not for everybody. Then Halloween 2, just to confuse you even more with the Halloween 2 from the 80s, goes a completely different way. With Malcolm McDowell as this, I don't know, he's a novelist, isn't he? But
yeah.
is he doing the whole talk show thing in this?
Yeah, there's a great scene. The funniest thing about Halloween 2, which is really serious and brutal, is Malcolm McDowell is now fully into this version of Loomis where he's whoring himself out. He's written a book just to cash in on Michael Myers, and he goes on a TV talk show with Weird Al Yankovic, where there's a bit of confusion about Michael Myers being the one from Wayne's World.
Yeah.
And Malcolm McDowell is great. He's now, I think, in the first one, the one problem is they were kind of caught between a new film, a prequel, a remake. So he had a lot of old Donald Pleasance lines in the first one, but in the second one, he's got, he's really stepped into the character, and now it's really removed from Donald Pleasance. So he has in the second one some of Rob Zombie's like best cynical kind of dialogue.
Mm-hmm. But that's it. I would say the second one is the one people tend to slag off more than his first film, but that's usually due to certain scenes in the second film.
Yeah. You see, the second one is the one I like the most. I think I think the second one is the one where it felt like, we don't have to be a remake now. We don't really have to be anything except kind of tick the box for Michael Myers. And the second one does, for a time, look like it's going to be a retread of the original Halloween 2, because there's a hospital bit at the start. But really, it becomes this kind of really downbeat story of what surviving something like the events of Halloween would be like. So you spend a lot of time with Scout Taylor Compton, now on smack, and completely miserable, not able to overcome what she went through. And although people were quick to slate her and to moan about the film, I think it's actually quite impressive that they took such an unsympathetic take on the typical final girl, because you don't like her at all. She's horrible, but then who wouldn't be if they've been through that?
Character, though. But if in terms of those two films, it works for that character.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really downbeat, and there's kind of some surrealistic stuff with the return of Michael's mum as a kind of ethereal spirit that follows him around with a white horse in these weird surrealistic dream sequences, which I really like, but again, some people just thought were ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's extremely brutal. It's probably the most brutal, maybe not the goriest, but it's the most brutal of all of the Halloween sequels in terms of really unpleasant head stomping violence and very kind of unpleasant Rob Zombie-ish dialogue. And of course, the usual amount of Rob Zombie cameos that he likes to put in his movies to give some of his favorite actors some work.
I could tell you that in his first Halloween film, there's 20 deaths. on and off screen.
Wow.
So there's quite a few there. That's a massive comparison to Sweet 16.
Yeah. Yeah. That's mental, and it feels like it as well. It's relentless in its pace and everything, and it has a very downbeat ending. It's got this Danielle Harris is back, and
Yeah.
I think that makes it her 4th Halloween film. Of course, she's playing different characters in the Rob Zombie versions, but that's the 4th time she's in a Halloween film, and she's really good. And there's a horrible sequence where Brad Dourif, who is her dad in the film, which is the old role played by Charles Cyphers in the old one, basically finds her dead, and it's just another of those moments you don't often see in a slasher film, where someone finds their dead loved one and is absolutely beside themselves. And there's no happy ending. Scout Taylor Compton's totally batshit mad. There's no hope for her. It's great. Halloween 2, Rob Zombie, my favorite of the sequels, except for Halloween 3.
So there you go. That's all of the Halloween films up to 2018, which, again, you're going to have to talk about this because I haven't seen it. I've read things, I've heard things from people, and I know it's going to be a good film, but I just haven't had the time to watch it.
Oh, good Lord.
I know. I'll get around to it eventually. But after you've had a brief rundown of what the new one's about, and of course, which is going to have 2 more sequels, which, as far as I'm aware, is going to be directed by, is it David Gordon Green that directed this one? I believe that's his name.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I believe he is signed up to do the sequels. So he will be the only director that's directed more than one Halloween film.
Yeah.
So yeah. Take it away. Halloween 2018.
Halloween 2018. This made a fortune. This was huge last year, hence the 2 sequels. And I suppose it hit a period of horror being really big again, which is what H2O did in the 90s. Halloween 2018 came around after things like It had done really well and Get Out. So horror was big at the cinema again. And Jamie Lee Curtis was willing. More importantly, it was the 40th anniversary of the original. So this is really Halloween H40.
Yeah.
Which is twice as much water.
Yeah, twice as much water.
20 years older. We all feel 20 years older. John Carpenter's back. They basically said, John, he's like, fuck off. No, John. What? We want you to do the music and pretend to be the producer. How much will you pay me? Loads of money.
Oh,
You're busy. You're watching wrestling.
Comic books, leave me alone.
So, what do you want? The old theme? Well, can you jazz it up a bit? Yeah.
Jazz it up.
So John Carpenter came back with which is a really good kind of resurrection of his old theme tunes and stuff from Halloween. Jamie Lee was back for the first time since Resurrection, and of course, to make any sense whatsoever, Halloween 2018 has to basically say that that stuff where we said Michael's Laurie's brother. That never happened.
Yeah, you know everything happened between 1979 and 2017. Yeah, ignore all that.
Yeah, but what about that little girl? No, she didn't exist. But Laurie's dead. No. So it's a direct sequel to Halloween from 1978. Although confusingly, it's called Halloween. So for the first time in history, a sequel to a film has the same title as the one before.
Yeah, and it's the 3rd film in the series with the same title.
But if it had been called Halloween 2, it would have been the 3rd Halloween 2. So there was no win with this.
Halloween, I don't know what you would call it.
What about Halloweens?
Halloweens. Oh, yeah, chuck an S on the end of it. The Halloween.
What about Halloween Harder? Halloween with a Vengeance?
Halloween Does Dallas.
They were all considered, apparently. John Carpenter decided to go for Halloween, so he got extra money. So this is a direct sequel to the Carpenter film for the 40th anniversary. So I think, with something like this, I think straight away it comes with a real nostalgia factor. So you almost want to like it straight away because you're thinking, 40 years. John Carpenter's back. He's off his sofa. What Halloween 2018 does is some quite nice things where, although it's not following the other Halloweens, it kind of has elements of them. So there's a really effective sequence which is a bit like the Halloween 4 scene where Michael escapes from being transferred between prisons. So there's a bit of homage to the sequels that otherwise it's saying never existed, which is nice. So in this one, not only is Jamie Lee Curtis back, Donald Pleasant's still dead, but also Nick Castle is back, and Nick Castle was the original so-called Shape. He's back playing Michael Myers, which is a nice touch that not many people probably noticed unless they're the fans. This is an alternate universe of Laurie. So in H2O, she had a son, she had a husband or a boyfriend. In this is kind of older Laurie, so a kind of grandmother Laurie that is stuck inside. She's got this kind of really massive house that she's modified to become a kind of massively secure fortress. She's agoraphobic. You get the sense that she's been through a lot. She's had like a failed marriage. She's got a daughter, but her daughter hasn't seen her for a long time, as they're estranged. And the movie starts with a couple of podcasters that visit Michael in jail. There's a kind of Loomis figure in it as well. And there's a whole bunch of new teenagers, including a character which is basically Laurie's granddaughter. So it's a whole new backstory for Laurie and the right quota of teenagers and a Dr. Loomis figure that isn't Donald Pleasance. And you kind of miss him, to be honest with you. The Dr. Loomis stuff is not great, but it's good. It's a really good movie. It's fun. It's played straight, but it's got a good amount of references for people that have watched the other films. Most importantly, I think it makes Michael scary. It's not changed his character. He's still very frightening. He's probably closer to the Tyler Mane Michael Myers than he is the early ones, because the movie is gorier and nastier. But it's 2018, so I guess it had to be. And it does a thing where it's brought back Laurie, but it's also got two other strong female characters. So you get the sense of they've sat around a table and felt, wow, Christ, this is going on. We've got to have lots of strong female characters. So let's have three. Three from different generations. Wow. #me too. But even that's not new. Slasher movies were doing that kind of thing back in the 80s. So it's just a revival of that kind of stuff. I do think overall that I think Jamie Lee Curtis had a lot more to do in H2O, and she was a more interesting version of Laurie in that film. But she's still very, very good. And the film does a good job of balancing like the family stuff with her and some really good slasher sequences. So yeah, I really enjoyed Halloween 2018, and I was glad that it did so well.
Well, I said to you when they said they was going to do another Halloween film at the time, I said to you, there's no doubt it's going to do well. And even though they keep saying this is going to be the last Halloween, you damn well it's going to be some sequels. So do you think it warrants 2 sequels?
Well, yeah, probably not. I mean, I think when I watched Halloween 2018, I probably thought, this would be a good note to end on. But then I thought that at the end of number 4 and H2O and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So it will just keep on going. And then when these two have happened, probably another 20 years will pass and someone else will remake it. And they'll pretend the John Carpenter one didn't exist. and he'll be a vampire that twinkles. It's a shame, really, because, well, again, I thought the same with Halloween H2O. I thought, 20th anniversary, they've actually made a nice tribute to it. Let's put it to rest. But then they have to keep on going.
Yes. So that's all 11 films of the all 11 films of the franchise so far.
Cool, blimey.
But put it in your, like I said earlier, your top 11 in your case. My case would be top 10. What order would you put it in? So number 1 being your best, 11 being the worst of the whole lot.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. You tell me your first one, and I'll tell you my first one, then we'll go from that.
Do you mean in reverse order or from number 1?
Reverse order. So number 11 would, in your case, would be the worst film. And number 11
okay. That one's easy. The worst one is Halloween Resurrection.
Yep, that's exactly what I got. Okay, so what you got next?
Number 10, Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers.
Which is number 6.
Yes.
Yep, so that's what I got as well. So far, it's exactly the same. Though I do say that Halloween 6, the producer's cut, is better than the actual one.
Oh, it is, yeah. And if they'd released that, this might figure a bit higher, I guess.
Yeah,
but
that's what I.
fair to it. Yeah.
Okay, what you got in your next one?
What is the next one? Number 9.
Well, in your case, it's number 9. In my case, it's number 8.
Oh, okay. So my next one after Resurrection and Curse has to be Halloween 5.
Ah, that's interesting. Mine's Halloween 2, as in the Rob Zombie one.
Ah, wow. I'll make a note of that. No Christmas card this year. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So next after that?
Oh, after that, so after Halloween 5, I would put the 1981 Halloween 2.
Well, I've got Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Cancel birthday present and send a bag of... Oh, yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Then after that, for me, it's Halloween 5. So what you got then? So in your case, this will be number... What would that be? Number 7 in yours?
Yeah. Oh, number 7. Yeah, number 7 would be Halloween 4.
Oh, as I said, mine's Halloween 5. What you got next then?
Next up would be Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Oh, let's see. I knew it'd be up high, but I wasn't sure how high it would be. Okay, for me, it's Halloween H2O.
Oh, cool.
I quite like that one. So next?
My next one would be 2018 Halloween.
Well, of course, I haven't seen that one yet. So for me, next, it's Halloween 2. The original Halloween 2. Not the Rob Zombie Halloween 2, or what this will technically be Halloween 2 2018.
This one is going to be Halloween 2.
Halloween 2.
My next one, Halloween H2O.
Yeah, that seems fair. Halloween 4. That's in, because now for me, it's my top 3 now.
Is it my top 4 now?
Yeah, your top 4.
I just got to clarify. Oh yeah, right. I'm still on. I know what I'm doing. Just got to write this. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting my order definitely sorted out and make sure I have enough films.
I can tell you what my top 3 are if you want. So my top 3 from 3 to 1. 3 is Halloween 4. Halloween 3 is number 2, and Halloween, as in the original Halloween, is number 1.
Ah.
So what you got in your top 4?
I've run out of films. Hang on a second.
You've run out of films. Do you want to make them some more Halloween films for that?
Yeah, do you want? Can you phone John Carpenter? I've only got 3 left, right? Can I just run through what I've done?
Yeah, go on then. What you got?
I've got in no order at all. I've got Halloween 1978, Halloween 3, and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. What have I missed?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know, but maybe there's a reason you missed one. I don't know. It wasn't Resurrection, I know that.
Oh, that's strange.
But yeah, it's interesting though to hear what sort of order people will put the Halloween films in, or just any franchise films in, because everybody has different tastes, and maybe there's a different reason as to why.
Yeah,
they put it in that order, but
sure.
But Halloween Resurrections, unsurprisingly, was right at the bottom.
Oh, damn it. It deserves it as well. But my top 3 actually is very similar to yours, but the difference is number 3 for me would be the Rob Zombie Halloween 2.
Yep.
Number 2 would... you see, this is tricky, but I feel a duty to make the obvious one number 1. So number 2 would be Halloween 3.
Yep.
And number 1 would be Halloween.
See, for me, was a bit like that with you, was the obvious one is to put Halloween because that's what started it all off.
Yeah.
I've always had more love for Halloween 3. Yeah. I know, terrible.
Outrage.
Yeah. So that's all of the Halloweens thus far. But if you want to read reviews on all of the Halloween films, you can go to horrorscreensvideovault.co.uk and go to the franchise corner section where you can read up on all of the Halloween films, more of an in-depth review. and it's got star ratings. And let us know what your favorite Halloween film is and what your thoughts are on Halloween 2018. So, I've got some facts for you. Did you know that the Halloween theme tune was done in 4 days?
Wow.
But what do you think is the one with the least deaths Halloween films?
Oh, least deaths. Let's just have a think about it. Now, Halloween 3, we assume he doesn't get there in time and that all the kids in America are dead, right? Stop it!
Well, you can think of it that way, but I'll tell you something about Halloween 3 in a minute.
So the least deaths, I would say, has to be the original Halloween.
No, surprisingly. Because we're including on and off screen. So it's people that you obviously see on screen and people who end up dying and then you see them later.
Sure.
So Halloween H2O has the least deaths. It has 7.
Yes.
Next, so the second highest death rate is Halloween 2007, which has 20, as I mentioned earlier. The one with the most deaths, which interestingly you pointed out that if Tom Atkins got to the end of the film and managed to get in hold of all the different networks to cancel the advert being played for the same everybody, that has the most deaths in the whole Halloween franchise. It has 21 on and off-screen deaths.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's really gruesome. The entire family gets killed by giant wriggly things.
Well, it's a bit where they go in the testing room, isn't it? And they put the
testing room A.
Hey, buddy, put this mask on. No, don't watch the advert. It's a great film.
It's easily the best of the sequels. As much as I like some of them and the Rob Zombie ones, number 3 is great. Yeah.
But yeah, that is all the Halloween films so far. I'm sure over time we will come back to the Halloween franchise. We may even do, just randomly pick one and talk more in depth about it, like we did with Sweet 16. But is there anything else you want to say about the Halloween films?
I say, I think the best soundtrack of them is number 3, but I think what they do with the electric guitar for number 6 is really great.
Yeah, I don't remember much about the 6 soundtrack, but Halloween 3 soundtrack I was actually listening to before we started doing this podcast. Might as well get in the mood.
Yeah, that's a great score. Yeah.
But yeah, that is everything I have to say about the Halloween things. Of course, as I mentioned, you can read about it more on the website. Stephen has written a book about a different slasher film, which could be considered the one that kickstarted the horror genre once again, which is Scream, which is released by Altea Publishing.
That's correct. Yeah, Altea Publishing. Yeah.
So it's available, as far as I'm aware, it's available on Kindle and paperback. I have a paperback copy. I'd say it's definitely worth picking up if you're into the Scream films as horror in general. I know some people are big fans of the Scream things. Me personally, as you know, I'm not a big fan of it, but I obviously understand what it did to the horror genre. So it has its love in that respect, but as a film, I'm not a big fan of it. Oh, I've killed Stephen evidently.
I'm back. Sorry, I was just there, but I'm back.
Yeah. So.
But the good thing is, the book's, I suppose, not about saying, "Oh, how great Scream is," but it's more about questioning. Was it really that original? And did it really do the horror genre a favor, or did it actually kind of set it back a bit? So I suppose, yeah, it's trying to look at it from both sides.
Which is what has always been my point, because as we mentioned in other conversations amongst ourselves, is films prior to Scream were doing things that Scream were doing. It's just this had a bigger platform.
Yeah, definitely. even things like Sweet 16 were playing around with the conventions that Scream, makes a big point about doing. They were trying different things. They were introducing like humor and spoofs into the slasher formula. So yeah, there was nothing new that it was doing. It did it, as you say, at the right time for the right audience.
Yeah, and of course it kickstarted the whole teen horror, which could be considered either a good thing or a bad thing depending on the type of person you are. Of course, in the case of America, PG-13 ratings do quite well.
Yeah,
films gets a different type of audience in. But yeah, so pick up that book. It said it's available on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, probably various different bookshops. Check it out. It is worth reading. Is there any plans to do any other books on maybe a different franchise, different slasher film?
Yeah, possibly. I'm not sure. I think there's still a space for doing like a detailed one on the original Friday the 13th. I was thinking of that because that still tends to be a bit of a black sheep. So it obviously created a whole franchise, but nobody speaks about it in the way they do about the Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. So Friday the 13th has always had a bit of a bum rap for such a trend-setting film. So maybe that deserves a bit more love than it actually gets the original.
But as you know, for me, because you got you think the big slashers, you got Halloween, you've got Friday the 13th, and you got the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Basically, that's the big three. For me, Friday the 13th was the big one for me. So I'm a big fan of the Friday the 13th film. So I would certainly read it. So I was like reading different opinions on the Friday the 13th franchise anyway, because I like Jason Takes Manhattan. But I know why people don't.
Yeah.
So,
that's really fun. Yeah, they're good fun.
I'm sure we'll talk about the Friday the 13th film somewhere along the line anyway. But
yeah,
that is it for this episode of Horror Screens Podcast. As I mentioned earlier, there is a competition where you can win The Haunting of Hill House on DVD. It is in Region 2. There's also a copy of the book available to be won, the one winner will win the DVD and the book. So the winner will be picked on the second episode, so 29th of November. It's the next episode, and that is the last Friday. So every last Friday of every month is when we will have a new episode. Next episode, we will be talking about Dracula versus Frankenstein from 1971, which is by Al Edmondson, which, if I'm correct, you said you haven't seen or you had seen?
I think I've seen it, but it was a long time ago. I was probably about 5.
So this will be a complete new experience for you then, pretty much.
Oh yeah. It's a long time ago, and I don't even know if I watched it properly then. I've got no memory of it whatsoever, except kind of a vague memory of us having the video cassette for some reason, and my dad probably saying, "Whoa, what the hell is this?" So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a new viewing, really.
But yeah, that would be an interesting one to talk about. So we got that coming up. So that will be done in the, what are we calling it?
Random retro.
Or
retro random.
Of course, if you can think of a better title for us, let us know and we'll use that. But for now, it's called what Stephen just said.
Random retro. Or retro random.
So that's what we'll call it for now. But as we'll be going into the Christmas period, we will also be talking about Christmas horror movies.
La, 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 la.
So I don't know. We could just talk about any horror movies from Christmas if you want.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't have to be anything specific.
No, there's many, isn't there? But yeah, anything is up for grabs, from the kind of cycle of Christmas slashers like Silent Night, Deadly Night, to the more mainstream ones like Gremlins and Krampus. There's a whole bunch of them.
Hey, see, you forgot Santa Claus Meets the Martians.
Santa Claus Meets the Martians. I haven't actually seen that. I've just heard about it. God damn it.
let's see, Santa Claus versus the Devil. That's another one that's quite entertaining.
Oh my gosh.
They are both Mexican films, I believe.
Ah, I would be up for watching those. They sound good fun.
So yeah, so that is it from Horror Screens podcast. As mentioned, we are back on the 29th of November, so mark it in your calendar, last Friday of every month. Let us know any feedback via social media on the website, which of course you can check out at www.horrorscreensvideovault.co.uk. And this podcast will be available on pretty much any podcast streaming site that you get it from. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. Basically, where you listen to your podcast, this is where we will be. So from myself, Peter, and Stephen.
Thank you.
We will catch you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Farewell.
Keep it creepy.
Yes, and sticky.